You are not what you think you are. You are not flesh. You are not bone. You are a living current, a field of electricity wrapped in skin. Right now, as you hear these words, your heart is firing, not pumping, firing. A rhythmic pulse of voltage that has not stopped since the moment you were born. Every thought you think is a spark jumping across a synapse. Every memory you hold is a pattern of charge stored in living tissue. You are, at your core, an electrical event. And yet, you feel drained, not just tired, something deeper, a heaviness in your cells, a fog behind your eyes, a slow dimming of something you can't quite name. You have felt it for weeks, maybe months, maybe longer. Your body is running on low voltage. Your mitochondria are underperforming. Your cellular charge has dropped, and no amount of sleep seems to restore it. That changes tonight. What you are about to experience is a process we call bioelectrical overclocking, a deliberate, systematic method for raising the voltage of your cells, clearing the static from your nervous system, restoring the electromagnetic coherence your body was designed to maintain. You will learn how your own breath, your own awareness, your own intention can manually reset the charge at a cellular level. And when the static clears, what remains is not just energy, it is silence. Deep, absolute, crystalline silence. So let your shoulders fall, let your jaw soften, let the full weight of your body sink into whatever is holding you right now. You don't need to carry anything for the next 2 hours. Your only task is to listen, to breathe, and to follow the current inward, into the grid, into the hum, into the living electricity that has been waiting for you to pay attention. We begin now. Consider this. The device you are listening to right now, whether it is a phone, a laptop, or a speaker, runs on electricity. It was designed by engineers who understood voltage, current, and resistance. They built circuits, they managed power flow, they ensured that energy moved from one point to another with precision. And yet, the most sophisticated electrical system ever known was not built in a factory. It was not designed on a blueprint. It was grown inside a womb, in silence, in darkness. One cell becoming two, two becoming four, four becoming a civilization of trillions, each one carrying its own charge, each one humming with its own quiet voltage. You are that system. You are not merely alive, you are electric. And tonight, we are going to explore what that truly means. Not as a metaphor, not as poetry, as physics, as biology, as the measurable, provable, undeniable reality of what you are beneath the skin, beneath the muscle, beneath everything you have ever been told about your own body. Let us begin at the smallest scale. A single cell. Imagine it now. Not as a circle in a textbook, not as a flat drawing with a neat label. Imagine it as it truly is. A living, breathing, three-dimensional world unto itself. A sphere of unimaginable complexity, surrounded by a membrane so thin that if you were to stack 10,000 of them on top of each other, they would barely equal the width of a single human hair. And yet, this impossibly thin membrane is not passive. It is not just a wall. It is a gate, a filter, a decision maker. It chooses what enters. It chooses what leaves. And most importantly, it maintains a difference in electrical charge between its inside and its outside. This difference is called the membrane potential, and it is the foundation of everything you are. At rest, when a cell is simply existing, simply being, the inside of that cell carries a charge of approximately negative 70 millivolts. Negative 70 millivolts. That number may sound small. It may sound insignificant. But consider this. That voltage is measured across a membrane only 5 nanometers thick. If you were to scale that membrane up to the thickness of a standard wall in your home, the equivalent voltage would be in the range of 14 million volts per meter. 14 million. That is a force that rivals lightning. That is a force that would arc across open air, and it exists right now across every single one of your 37 trillion cells. You are not low energy. You are a contained storm. So how is this voltage created? How does a living cell, made of nothing more than carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and a handful of trace minerals, generate and sustain an electrical charge? The answer lies in 2 atoms. 2 impossibly common, almost humble elements that you consume every single day without a second thought. Sodium and potassium. These are ions. Atoms that carry an electrical charge because they have either gained or lost an electron. Sodium carries a positive charge. Potassium carries a positive charge. And the dance between them is the engine of your existence. Embedded in the membrane of every cell is a structure called the sodium-potassium pump. It is a protein, a molecular machine, and it works without rest, without pause, without a single moment of hesitation, every second of every day of your life. What it does is deceptively simple. It takes 3 sodium ions from inside the cell and pushes them out. Then it takes 2 potassium ions from outside the cell and pulls them in. 3 out, 2 in, 3 out, 2 in, over and over and over again. And because it always moves more positive charges out than it brings in, the inside of the cell becomes slightly more negative than the outside. That difference, that tiny imbalance, is your membrane potential. That is your negative 70 millivolts. That is the charge that makes you alive. Now, pause for a moment and consider the scale of what is happening inside you right now. You have approximately 37 trillion cells. And in every single one of them, sodium-potassium pumps are firing. Not some of them, all of them. Right now, as you breathe, as you listen, as your eyes rest and your mind drifts along with these words, trillions upon trillions of tiny pumps, each one consuming energy, each one maintaining that sacred voltage, each one contributing to the vast, shimmering electrical field that is you. It has been estimated that nearly 30% of all the energy your body produces at rest, not during exercise, not during exertion, but simply at rest, is consumed by these pumps alone. 1/3 of your resting energy exists for no other purpose than to maintain your charge. That is how important this voltage is. Your body will sacrifice almost everything else before it lets this charge collapse. Because if it collapses, you do not just feel tired, you cease to exist. Let us go deeper. This membrane potential is not static. It is not a battery sitting on a shelf, holding its charge in silence. It is dynamic. It is alive. It fluctuates. It responds. When a nerve cell receives a signal, When something touches your skin, when a sound reaches your ear, when a thought forms in the labyrinth of your mind, what happens is not chemical, it is electrical. The membrane potential shifts. Channels open in the cell membrane, tiny gates made of protein, and sodium ions flood inward. The voltage spikes from negative 70 millivolts to positive 30 millivolts in less than a millisecond. This is called an action potential, a pulse, a spark, a wave of electricity that travels down the length of a nerve cell at speeds that can reach 120 meters per second. And when it reaches the end of that nerve, it triggers the release of chemical messengers that leap across a gap to the next cell, where the process begins again. Spark, leap, spark, leap. This is how you think. This is how you feel. This is how you move your hand, blink your eye, draw your breath. Every sensation, every decision, every flicker of consciousness is, at its root, an electrical event cascading through a network of living wires. And this network is staggering. Your brain alone contains roughly 86 billion neurons, each one capable of firing hundreds of times per second, each one connected to thousands of others through synapses, junctions where electricity becomes chemistry and chemistry becomes electricity again. The number of possible connections in your brain exceeds the number of stars in the known universe. You carry a cosmos inside your skull, and it runs on voltage. But here is what no one tells you. Here is the part that gets lost between the textbook and the lived experience of being human. This electrical system can degrade, it can slow, it can lose its coherence. Not because it is broken, but because it is starved. When the minerals that fuel those sodium-potassium pumps become depleted, when magnesium and potassium and zinc and the trace conductors that facilitate ion flow are consistently underrepresented in what you consume, the pumps begin to falter, not dramatically, not suddenly, slowly, quietly. The membrane potential of each cell drops by a millivolt here, a millivolt there, and you feel it, though you would never know to call it by its true name. You feel it as brain fog, as heaviness in your limbs, as a strange inability to think clearly or feel deeply. You call it being tired, you call it stress, you call it aging. But what it actually is, at the most fundamental level, is a loss of voltage. Your cells are undercharged. Your biological battery is running low. And this is not a metaphor. This is measurable. Researchers have documented that cells in a state of disease consistently show lower membrane potentials than healthy cells. Cells that are inflamed, cells that are fatigued, cells that are moving toward dysfunction. They all share one common signature. Their voltage has dropped. The elegant negative 70 millivolts has slid toward negative 50, negative 40, and in the most extreme cases, towards zero. And when a cell's voltage approaches zero, it does not repair, it does not regenerate, it does not communicate with its neighbors. It either dies or, in some cases, it begins to behave erratically, losing its connection to the intelligent network of the body, becoming something isolated, something chaotic. Now consider the opposite. Consider a body in which every cell is fully charged, in which the membrane potential is strong and stable, and humming at its optimal frequency, in which the sodium-potassium pumps are fueled and rhythmic and precise. What does that feel like? It feels like clarity. It feels like calm. Not the calm of exhaustion, not the quiet of giving up, but the calm of a system operating exactly as it was designed to operate. It feels like waking up and knowing, without effort, without caffeine, without negotiation, that you are ready. It feels like a mind that moves without friction, a body that responds without delay, an emotional state that is not reactive but sovereign. This is what full voltage feels like, and it is your birthright. The 37 trillion cells of your body do not operate in isolation. They are connected, they communicate, they synchronize. And when they do, the individual voltages of each cell combine to create something larger, a bioelectrical field that extends beyond the boundary of your skin. This is not mysticism, this is physics. Every electrical current generates a magnetic field. This is one of the fundamental laws of electromagnetism, described by James Clerk Maxwell over a century ago. Your heart, the strongest electrical generator in your body, produces a field that can be measured several feet away from your chest with sensitive instruments. Your brain produces fields that we routinely detect through electroencephalography. You are not contained within your body. Your electrical presence radiates outward. You are, in the most literal sense, a field of energy moving through the world, interacting with other fields, influenced by the electromagnetic environment around you in ways that science is only beginning to map. And so this is where we stand, at the threshold of understanding. You now know that you are electrical. You know that your cells maintain a charge. You know that this charge is created by the ceaseless work of ion pumps embedded in membranes thinner than light can resolve. You know that this charge is the basis for every thought, every heartbeat, every moment of awareness. And you know that when this charge fades, so does everything that makes you feel alive. But knowing is only the first step. The question that follows is the one that matters. Where does the energy come from? What fuels those pumps? What generates the raw power that your cells convert into voltage? The answer lives deep inside each cell, in structures so ancient that they predate complex life itself. They are called mitochondria, and they are not merely parts of your cells. They are the engines, the furnaces, the silent, tireless generators of nearly all the energy your body will ever use. Every molecule of fuel they produce, every unit of ATP they release, is a direct contribution to the voltage that defines you. And it is to these engines, these ancient and extraordinary power plants, that we turn our attention next. Because if the membrane is where your voltage is held, the mitochondria are where it is born. And understanding how they work, how they fail, and how they can be restored is the key to everything that follows. So, let your body settle a little deeper. Let your breath slow just a fraction more. The foundation has been laid. The architecture of your electrical self is now visible. And the deeper journey into the engine room, into the place where light becomes life, is about to begin. Deep inside you, in a place no light has ever reached, something is burning, not with flame, not with heat you can feel on your skin, but with a slow, ancient, molecular fire that has not gone out since the day you were conceived. It burns in every cell, in every tissue, in every organ, right now, as your body rests and your mind floats along the surface of these words. 10 quadrillion tiny furnaces are converting the food you have eaten and the air you have breathed into the single molecule that powers everything you do, everything you think, everything you are. These furnaces have a name. You have heard it before, perhaps in a classroom, perhaps in passing, perhaps as a phrase repeated so often it lost its meaning. Mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell. But that phrase, as familiar as it is, does not come close to capturing the truth of what these structures are, what they do, and what they mean for the quality of every waking and sleeping moment of your life. Let us go inside. Let us shrink beyond the visible, beyond the microscopic, into the interior of a single cell, past the membrane with its vigilant sodium-potassium pumps, past the cytoplasm, the thick, gel-like fluid that fills the cellular interior, and there, scattered throughout the cell like small, oblong capsules, you will find them, dozens of them, hundreds in some cells, thousands in others. Your heart cells, which never stop working, contain roughly 5,000 mitochondria each. Your brain cells, which consume more energy per gram than any other tissue in your body, are packed with them. They cluster where energy is needed most. They migrate within the cell towards sites of demand. They are not passive. They are not decorations. They are alive in a way that defies our usual understanding of cellular components. And there is a reason for that. A reason buried so deep in time that it predates every animal, every plant, every complex organism that has ever existed on this planet. Approximately 2 billion years ago, the Earth was a different world. The atmosphere was toxic. The oceans were hot and acidic. Life existed, but it was simple. Single-celled organisms drifting through a hostile chemical sea. And among these organisms were two very different kinds of life. One was large, relatively speaking, and slow. It consumed other cells for energy. The other was small, fast, and possessed a remarkable ability. It could take oxygen, a gas that was poison to most life at the time, and use it to generate enormous amounts of energy. One day, and we do not know exactly how or why, the larger cell consumed the smaller one. But the smaller cell did not die. It survived inside its host, and it kept doing what it had always done. It kept burning oxygen. It kept producing energy. And the host cell, now flooded with more energy than it had ever known, thrived. It divided. It multiplied. It evolved. And it never let go of that small, brilliant engine inside it. Over hundreds of millions of years, the two became inseparable. The smaller organism lost its ability to live independently. It surrendered most of its own genetic code to the host cell's nucleus. But it kept a small ring of its own DNA, a remnant of its former independence, a molecular signature of its ancient origins. And to this day, every mitochondrion inside you carries that ring. You are not a single organism. You are a partnership, a collaboration that began in the primordial ocean and has continued, unbroken, through every generation of life that followed. The energy you feel when you are at your best, the clarity, the focus, the deep vitality that makes existence feel effortless, that energy is the gift of an organism that has been living inside your cells for 2 billion years. Now let us understand what these ancient engines actually do, how they take the raw materials of your daily existence, the food on your plate, and transform them into something your cells can use. The molecule they produce is called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. It is the universal energy currency of all life on Earth. Every bacterium, every plant, every animal, every cell in your body runs on it. When your muscles contract, they spend ATP. When your neurons fire, they spend ATP. When your sodium-potassium pumps maintain the membrane potential we explored earlier, they spend ATP. You produce and consume roughly your entire body weight in ATP every single day. Not over a week, not over a month. Every day. That is the scale of the demand. And the mitochondria are the ones meeting it. The process by which they do this is called oxidative phosphorylation, and it takes place along a structure so intricate, so precisely engineered, that it rivals anything human technology has ever produced. Embedded in the inner membrane of each mitochondrion is a series of protein complexes, 4 of them arranged in sequence. This is the electron transport chain, and it is, in the most literal sense, an electrical circuit. Here is how it works. The food you eat is broken down in stages. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are disassembled into smaller molecules that enter the mitochondria and are processed through a cycle of chemical reactions that strips away high-energy electrons. These electrons are not free-floating. They are carried by special molecules, shuttled like passengers on a train, and delivered to the first complex of the electron transport chain. And then the journey begins. The electrons move from complex 1 to a carrier molecule, from that carrier to complex 3, from complex 3 to another carrier, and finally to complex 4. At each stop, as the electrons pass through these massive protein structures, their energy is used to do something remarkable. Hydrogen ions, single protons, are pumped from one side of the inner mitochondrial membrane to the other, one by one, thousands per second, creating a gradient, a buildup of positive charge on one side of the membrane and a relative absence on the other. This gradient is a form of stored energy. It is potential. It is voltage. It is, in essence, the same principle as water building behind a dam. And when that pressure becomes great enough, the protons flow back through the membrane, but not randomly. They flow through a single, extraordinary molecular machine. It is called ATP synthase. And it is, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful structures in all of biology. ATP synthase is a rotary engine, a literal, physical, spinning motor made of protein. As protons flow through it, driven by the electrical gradient, it spins. And as it spins, it catalyzes the binding of a phosphate group to a molecule of adenosine diphosphate, creating adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Energy, life. One rotation produces 3 molecules of ATP, and this motor spins at roughly 150 revolutions per second. Inside every mitochondrion, inside every cell, inside you, right now, there are tiny engines spinning faster than a jet turbine, powered by an electrical gradient, producing the fuel that sustains your consciousness, your heartbeat, your every breath. The sheer elegance of it is almost unbearable. And at the end of the electron transport chain, after the electrons have given up their energy, after they have powered the pumps and driven the spinning of ATP synthase, they must go somewhere. They cannot simply accumulate. and so they are handed off to the final acceptor, oxygen. The oxygen you breathe in with every breath exists for this single purpose: to receive the spent electrons at the end of the chain and combine with hydrogen ions to form water. This is why you breathe. Not to fill your lungs, not as a mechanical habit. You breathe to provide the electron transport chain with its final acceptor. Without oxygen, the chain stops. The protons stop pumping. ATP synthase stops spinning. And within minutes, you die. Every breath you take is a direct act of service to the mitochondria, a delivery of the one molecule they cannot function without. But here is where the story becomes personal. Here is where the elegant theory meets the lived experience of fatigue, of fog, of feeling like something essential has dimmed inside you. These engines, these mitochondria, are not invulnerable. They are, in fact, exquisitely sensitive. When they are stressed, when they are overwhelmed by toxins, by chronic inflammation, by nutrient deficiencies, by the relentless demands of a nervous system that never fully rests, something begins to happen along the electron transport chain. The transfer of electrons becomes imprecise. At complex 1 and complex 3, electrons begin to slip. They escape the chain before reaching their proper destination, and when they do, they collide with oxygen molecules in the surrounding fluid, but not in the controlled, graceful way that happens at complex 4. Instead, they create something volatile: reactive oxygen species, free radicals, molecules with unpaired electrons that are chemically desperate to react with anything they touch. And what they touch is the mitochondria themselves, the membranes, the proteins, the DNA, that ancient, irreplaceable ring of mitochondrial DNA that has no protective coating, no repair crew as sophisticated as what guards the nuclear genome. This is oxidative stress, and it is the slow, quiet erosion of your cellular engines. When mitochondria are damaged, they produce less ATP. When they produce less ATP, the sodium-potassium pumps slow. When the pumps slow, the membrane potential drops. When the membrane potential drops, neurons fire less efficiently. Muscles recover more slowly. Immune cells respond with less precision. The entire cascading architecture of your vitality begins to sag. And you feel it. You feel it as the inability to concentrate for more than a few minutes. You feel it as a heaviness that sleep does not resolve. You feel it as emotional flatness, as a dimming of the colors of experience, as a strange distance between you and your own life. This is not a psychological problem. This is not a failure of willpower. This is a failure of energy production at the most fundamental level of your biology. Your engines are leaking, and the leak is costing you everything. But the opposite is also true. And this is the part that changes everything. Mitochondria are not static. They are not fixed in their capacity. They are adaptive. They respond to signals. They can multiply. They can fuse together, merging into larger, more efficient networks. They can divide damaged members from the herd and mark them for recycling in a process called mitophagy, a quality control system that removes the weakest engines and allows the strongest to proliferate. Your body already knows how to tune these engines. It has been doing it for 2 billion years. The question is whether you are providing the right conditions for that tuning to occur, the right raw materials, the right signals, the right balance between demand and recovery. Cold exposure stimulates the production of new mitochondria. So does sustained aerobic movement. So does the absence of constant feeding, the deliberate periods of fasting that force cells to shift from glucose dependence to fat oxidation, a pathway that produces fewer free radicals and more efficient ATP yield. Certain molecules, coenzyme Q10, magnesium, B vitamins, alpha-lipoic acid, serve as critical cofactors along the electron transport chain, filling gaps in the machinery, smoothing the transfer of electrons, reducing the leak, and, perhaps most profoundly, the simple act of controlled, slow breathing increases oxygen delivery to the mitochondria while simultaneously calming the nervous system's demand on them, creating a moment of surplus, a window in which repair and regeneration can outpace damage. This is what it means to tune your engines, not to push harder, not to force more output from a depleted system, but to remove the interference, to supply the materials, to create the conditions under which your mitochondria can do what they have done since before complex life existed. Burn clean, spin fast, produce the energy that makes consciousness possible. And so now, we arrive at a new question. You have your voltage, you have your engines, trillions of cells, each one charged, each one powered by ancient furnaces spinning in the dark. But energy without direction is just heat. Voltage without a pathway is just potential waiting to be wasted. For this energy to become thought, to become movement, to become the lived experience of being awake and aware and present in a body, it must travel, it must be conducted. It must flow through a network so vast, so intricate, so breathtakingly fast, that it makes every circuit board ever designed look primitive by comparison. That network is already inside you. It has been mapping itself since before you were born, weaving connections, building highways of signal and response that span from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet. And it is through this network that the raw power of your mitochondria becomes something more than energy. It becomes you. It becomes experience. It becomes the very sensation of being alive. And it is this network, this vast and luminous grid, that we are about to enter now. Imagine a city at midnight, not a city in chaos, not a city in noise, a city in perfect, humming equilibrium, every streetlight glowing at precisely the right intensity, every building drawing exactly the power it needs, every cable beneath the ground carrying current without resistance, without loss, without a single watt of energy wasted as heat or friction. The grid is alive. The grid is flawless. Now multiply that city by 1 billion. Shrink it to the size of a human body, and you will begin to approach, just begin, the reality of what is happening inside you right now. You are not merely a collection of cells producing energy. You are a network, a grid, a living infrastructure of electrical conduits so vast, so precisely woven, so exquisitely maintained that every signal sent from any point in your body can reach any other point in less than a heartbeat. This is your nervous system, and it is not just a part of you. In many ways, it is you, the part of you that feels, the part that knows, the part that is listening to these words and turning sound into meaning, meaning into imagery, imagery into something that resonates in the chest and settles in the bones. Let us trace the architecture. Your central nervous system begins at the brain, that dense constellation of 86 billion neurons we touched upon earlier, and extends downward through the brainstem into the spinal cord, a cable of neural tissue no thicker than your thumb that runs the length of your back, protected by the bony column of your vertebrae. From the spinal cord, nerves branch outward like roots from a trunk, splitting and splitting again, growing thinner and more numerous as they reach toward the periphery of your body. These are the peripheral nerves, and they reach everywhere, into the tips of your fingers, into the soles of your feet, into the walls of your intestines, into the surface of your skin, into the muscles of your face that allow you to smile, or wince, or close your eyes in rest. There is no part of you that is not wired. There is no tissue, no organ, no square centimeter of your body that does not have a line running back to the central grid. You are fully connected, fully online, every moment of every day. And the signals that travel along these lines are, as we have established, electrical action potentials. Waves of voltage that ripple down the length of a nerve fiber at extraordinary speed. But speed, in a system this complex, is not automatic. It is engineered. And the engineering is one of the most remarkable feats of biological design you will ever encounter. It is called myelination. And it is the reason you can think as fast as you think, react as fast as you react, and process the world with the fluid immediacy that you take for granted every waking second. Myelin is a substance, a fatty, white, insulating material that wraps around the long, thin fibers of your neurons in layers, like tape wound around a wire. But it does not wrap continuously. It wraps in segments, leaving tiny gaps between each section. These gaps are called the nodes of Ranvier, and they transform the way electricity moves through your body. In an unmyelinated nerve, an action potential must travel continuously along the entire length of the fiber, like a flame moving along a fuse. It works, but it is slow. In a myelinated nerve, something entirely different happens. The electrical signal cannot pass through the insulating myelin, so instead it jumps from one node to the next, leaping across the insulated segments in a process called saltatory conduction. And this jumping is fast. Unmyelinated fibers conduct signals at roughly 2 meters per second. Myelinated fibers can reach 120 meters per second. That is a 60-fold increase. That is the difference between a whisper and a lightning bolt. That is the difference between sluggish, foggy cognition and the kind of crystalline mental clarity where thoughts arrive fully formed and the world feels sharp and immediate and real. And so myelin is not a luxury. It is not an accessory. It is the insulation that makes your grid functional at the speeds consciousness requires. Without it, you would still be alive, still technically functional, but everything would be slower. Signals would degrade. Timing would drift. The precise coordination between your eyes and your hands, between your thoughts and your speech, between your intentions and your actions would blur and stutter. Diseases that damage myelin, conditions that strip away this insulation, produce exactly these symptoms: numbness, weakness, cognitive delay, a feeling of disconnection from one's own body. Because when the insulation fails, the current leaks. And when the current leaks, the grid begins to brown out. Now, you do not need to have a diagnosed condition to experience this. You experience small, subtle versions of it every day. When you are chronically stressed, your body diverts resources away from maintenance and toward crisis response. The production of myelin slows. The repair of damaged insulation is deprioritized. When you are chronically inflamed, the immune cells that should be protecting your nervous system become confused, sometimes attacking the very myelin they are supposed to guard. When you are chronically sleep-deprived, the glial cells responsible for producing and maintaining myelin become less efficient, less precise. The insulation thins, not dramatically, not catastrophically, but enough. Enough that signals lose a fraction of their speed. Enough that the timing between different regions of your brain drifts by milliseconds. And those milliseconds matter. They matter for your ability to hold a thought without losing it. They matter for your ability to feel an emotion without being overwhelmed by it. They matter for the seamless, effortless quality of experience that defines a nervous system operating at full conductivity. Think of it this way. When every fiber is fully myelinated, when every pathway is clear and fast and precise, your experience of being alive has a certain quality to it, a smoothness, a directness. You think, and the thought is there, complete, without effort. You move, and the movement is fluid, without hesitation. You feel, and the feeling is clean, not muddied by static or delayed by lag. This is what it feels like to have a perfectly conductive grid. And most of us have forgotten what it feels like because the degradation happens so slowly, so incrementally, that we mistake the diminished state for normal. We think this is just how it feels to be human. We think the fog is standard. It is not. But the grid is more than just speed. It is also regulation. And this is where we encounter one of the most extraordinary components of your entire nervous system. A single nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body. A wandering, branching, impossibly far-reaching conduit that connects your brain to nearly every major organ in your torso. It is called the vagus nerve. And if your nervous system is a grid, the vagus nerve is the master fuse. The vagus nerve originates in the brainstem, just above where the spinal cord begins, and it descends through the neck, past the throat, into the chest, and down into the abdomen. Along the way, it sends branches to the heart, to the lungs, to the stomach, to the intestines, to the liver, to the spleen. It is the primary channel of the parasympathetic nervous system, the division of your autonomic grid that governs rest, recovery, digestion, and repair. And its function is not merely to send signals downward from the brain to the organs. 80% of the vagus nerve's fibers are afferent, meaning they carry information upward from the organs to the brain. Your gut is constantly reporting to your brain through the vagus nerve. Your heart is sending data about its rhythm, its pressure, its workload. Your lungs are feeding back information about the depth and rate of your breath. The vagus nerve is not a one-way command line. It is a conversation, a continuous, bi-directional dialogue between your brain and the rest of your body. And here is why this matters so profoundly for your experience of energy, of clarity, of peace. The vagus nerve is the mechanism by which your body downregulates stress. When you perceive a threat, real or imagined, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, muscles tense, digestion halts. Energy is redirected to the limbs and the senses. This is the fight or flight response. It is fast, it is powerful, and it is expensive. It burns through ATP at an extraordinary rate. It floods the system with stress hormones that, over time, damage the very tissues they are meant to protect. And it is meant to be temporary, a brief spike, a momentary surge. After the threat passes, the vagus nerve is supposed to activate and bring everything back down. Slow the heart, relax the muscles, resume digestion, restore the body to a state of calm, efficient, parasympathetic equilibrium. But what happens when the threat never passes? What happens when the stress is not a predator but a deadline, a relationship, a financial pressure, an identity crisis, a world that feels fundamentally unsafe? The sympathetic system stays activated. The vagus nerve's calming signal is suppressed. And the grid, your entire nervous system, begins to operate in a state of chronic high voltage. Not the good kind. Not the kind that represents cellular health and strong membrane potentials. The dangerous kind. The kind that burns through resources without replacing them. The kind that keeps every circuit firing at maximum intensity with no recovery period. This is what chronic stress actually is at the level of your electrical grid. It is a sustained overload with a suppressed fuse. Your body's master circuit breaker has been disabled, and the system is running hot. The consequences cascade. Chronically elevated sympathetic tone increases inflammation. Inflammation damages myelin. Damaged myelin slows signal conduction. Slow conduction creates cognitive fog, emotional reactivity, and motor clumsiness. Meanwhile, the constant drain on ATP reserves depletes the mitochondria. Depleted mitochondria produce more free radicals. More free radicals create more inflammation, and the cycle deepens. Stress creates resistance. Resistance creates inefficiency. Inefficiency creates fatigue. Fatigue creates more stress. This is the biological brownout. Not a total blackout, not a collapse, just a slow, pervasive dimming of the lights. You can still function, you can still get through the day, but the quality of your experience has degraded so far from what it could be that you have forgotten what full brightness looks like. And yet, the grid is not damaged beyond repair. It is adaptive. It is plastic. It is capable of extraordinary restoration if given the right conditions. The vagus nerve can be strengthened. Its tone, its responsiveness, its ability to bring the system back to calm can be improved. Slow, deliberate breathing with extended exhalation directly stimulates the vagus nerve. Humming, chanting, even gargling activate the vagal pathways through the throat. Cold exposure triggers a vagal response that resets sympathetic dominance. And perhaps most powerfully, the simple act of safety, of genuine felt safety, not intellectual safety, but the bodily sensation of being unhurried, unmonitored, unthreatened, allows the vagus nerve to do what it has always been designed to do, to bring the grid back to equilibrium, to lower the voltage to sustainable levels, to allow repair, recovery, and the restoration of conductive clarity. When the vagus nerve is strong, when its tone is high, the transition from stress to calm is fast and smooth. The heart settles quickly after exertion. The the mind releases a worry almost as soon as it arises. The body moves through the day with a sense of fluid efficiency, neither too activated nor too sluggish. High vagal tone is associated with better emotional regulation, stronger immune function, improved digestion, deeper sleep, and a measurable increase in heart rate variability. The subtle variation in the time between heartbeats that is one of the most reliable biomarkers of overall health and resilience. A body with high vagal tone is a body with a responsive fuse, a grid that can handle surges without sustaining damage, a network that conducts life force without losing it to resistance and friction. This is what a perfectly conductive body feels like. Not wired, not buzzing, not artificially energized, smooth. Every signal arriving where it needs to, when it needs to, at exactly the intensity required, and no more. Every organ receiving precisely the right instructions from the brain and sending back precisely the right feedback. Every pathway clear, every insulating layer intact, every fuse responsive. The grid humming, not loudly, softly, the way a city hums at midnight when everything is working. And now you can feel it, perhaps just a hint of it, a settling in the chest, a quieting somewhere behind the eyes, the beginning of what happens when the grid starts to clear, when resistance drops, when the current flows without obstruction. You have understood the voltage, you have understood the engines that produce it, you have understood the grid that conducts it. And now there is one question left, the most intimate question of all. What happens when you take conscious control of this system? What happens when you stop being a passive passenger in your own electrical body and begin, deliberately, intentionally, to increase the clarity of the signal, to raise the voltage where it has dropped, to quiet the noise where it has accumulated, to overclock not through force, but through precision, through awareness, through the kind of deep, sustained attention that the nervous system recognizes not as effort, but as mastery. That is where we are going now, deeper into the grid, into the place where electricity becomes intention, where voltage becomes peace, where the hum of your body becomes something you do not just hear, but something you conduct. There is a machine inside your skull that processes 11 million bits of sensory information every single second. It does this while simultaneously regulating the rhythm of your heart, managing the chemistry of your blood, consolidating memories from the day before, predicting the trajectory of objects in motion, interpreting the emotional tone of a voice, constructing a three-dimensional model of the space around you, and maintaining the continuous, unbroken stream of awareness that you call your conscious experience. And it does all of this on roughly 20 watts of power. 20 watts, barely enough to light a dim bulb. The most advanced supercomputers in the world require millions of watts to perform tasks that your brain accomplishes effortlessly before breakfast. You are not carrying a computer in your head. You are carrying something that makes every computer ever built look like a child's toy. And tonight, we are going to learn how to make it run even better. The concept of overclocking comes from the world of computing. It refers to the practice of pushing a processor beyond its factory-set speed, increasing its clock rate so that it performs more calculations per second. Done poorly, overclocking generates excessive heat, creates errors, and can destroy the hardware. Done well, with proper cooling, with optimized voltage, With careful management of every variable, it transforms an ordinary machine into something extraordinary. The same principle applies to your brain, not as a metaphor, as a direct functional parallel. Your brain has a clock speed, it has voltage, it generates heat, it produces waste. And the difference between a mind that feels foggy, reactive, and exhausted, and a mind that feels clear, expansive, and deeply rested is not a difference of intelligence. It is not a difference of willpower. It is a difference of optimization, of efficiency, of how cleanly your neural circuits are firing and how effectively your brain is managing the metabolic cost of its own operation. Let us begin with clock speed. Your brain does not operate at a single, fixed frequency. It oscillates. Its electrical activity rises and falls in waves, rhythmic patterns of synchronized neural firing that can be measured through electrodes placed on the scalp. These are your brain waves, and they are not random. They are not noise. They are the fundamental operating frequencies of your consciousness, and each one corresponds to a distinct state of mind, a distinct quality of experience, a distinct relationship between you and the world. The fastest common frequency is called beta. Beta waves oscillate between roughly 13 and 30 cycles per second. This is the frequency of your waking, thinking, problem-solving mind. When you are analyzing a spreadsheet, when you are arguing a point, when you are navigating traffic, when you are scanning your environment for threats or opportunities, your brain is predominantly in beta. It is the frequency of engagement with the external world, and it is, for most people, the frequency they are trapped in from the moment they wake until the moment they collapse into sleep. Beta is not inherently bad. It is necessary. It is the frequency of action, of decision, of focused analytical thought, but it is expensive. High beta activity demands enormous amounts of ATP. It generates significant metabolic waste. It activates the sympathetic nervous system and keeps the body in a state of low-grade readiness. Living in beta is like running a processor at maximum clock speed with no thermal management. It works for a while, and then the system begins to degrade. Below beta lies alpha. Alpha waves oscillate between 8 and 13 cycles per second, and they represent something profoundly different. Alpha is the frequency of relaxed awareness, of presence without effort, of a mind that is awake, alert, fully conscious, but not grasping, not straining, not chasing the next thought or defending against the last one. Alpha is the state you enter when you close your eyes and simply breathe, when you gaze at a landscape without trying to analyze it, when you are absorbed in a creative flow so complete that time seems to dissolve. In alpha, the brain is still processing enormous amounts of information, but it is doing so efficiently, cleanly, without the metabolic overhead of beta's constant vigilance. Neural circuits fire in greater synchrony, meaning different regions of the brain coordinate their activity with less energy expenditure. The signal-to-noise ratio improves. What reaches your conscious awareness is clearer, more coherent, less cluttered by the static of anxiety and rumination. Alpha is not a lower state. It is a more efficient state. It is your brain running at a sustainable clock speed with optimized voltage, cool and silent under load. Below alpha lies theta, 4 to 8 cycles per second. Theta is the frequency of deep meditation, of the hypnagogic state between waking and sleeping, of vivid internal imagery and profound insight. It is the frequency at which the brain consolidates learning, integrates emotional experience, and accesses patterns of thought that are invisible to the beta mind. In theta, the analytical filters that normally constrain your thinking relax, and the brain begins to make connections across vast distances, linking ideas and memories and sensations that the waking mind would never place together. This is where creative breakthroughs occur, where long-standing problems suddenly resolve, where the sense of self softens and the boundary between you and the world becomes permeable. Theta is not unconsciousness. It is a different kind of consciousness, one that is quieter, deeper, and in many ways more intelligent than the rapid-fire processing of beta. And below theta lies delta, half a cycle to 4 cycles per second, the slowest rhythm, the deepest state. Delta is the frequency of dreamless sleep, of total physical restoration, of the complete withdrawal of conscious awareness from the external world. And it is in delta that something remarkable happens, something that connects directly to the concept of overclocking and the management of neural heat. Your brain, like any high-performance system, generates waste. When neurons fire, they consume glucose and oxygen and produce metabolic byproducts. Proteins misfold, cellular debris accumulates, inflammatory molecules build up in the interstitial spaces between cells. During waking hours, this waste accumulates faster than it can be cleared. Your brain is generating more heat, more exhaust, more molecular friction than its maintenance systems can handle in real time. And so it waits, it accumulates. And then, when you sleep, when your brain waves descend into the slow, rolling depths of delta, something extraordinary activates. It is called the glymphatic system, and it is your brain's cooling system, its cleaning crew, its waste removal infrastructure. The glymphatic system is a network of channels that runs alongside the blood vessels of the brain, filled with cerebrospinal fluid. During waking hours, these channels are mostly compressed and inactive. But during deep sleep, something changes. The glial cells of the brain, the support cells that outnumber neurons and maintain the neural environment, shrink. They physically contract, reducing their volume by as much as 60%. And as they shrink, the interstitial spaces between cells expand, and cerebrospinal fluid rushes in. It flows through the brain tissue like a tide, washing over and between the neurons, picking up the accumulated waste, the misfolded proteins, the metabolic debris, the amyloid fragments that, if left unchecked, are associated with neurodegenerative disease. It flushes them out, carries them away, drains them from the brain through channels that lead to the lymphatic system for disposal. This process is almost entirely dependent on deep, slow-wave sleep, on delta, on the brain reaching its lowest, slowest frequency and staying there long enough for the cleaning cycle to complete. And this is why sleep deprivation destroys cognitive performance so thoroughly. It is not merely that the brain is tired, it is dirty. The waste from yesterday's thinking has not been cleared. The channels are still compressed. The fluid has not flowed. And so today's thinking must occur in a cluttered, congested, thermally compromised environment. Every signal must push through a medium thick with debris. Every circuit must fire through tissue that is subtly inflamed by its own exhaust. The clock speed drops, not because the processor is damaged, but because it is overheating. It is running in a room with no ventilation, and every cycle generates more heat than the last. This is the first principle of neural overclocking. You cannot increase performance by pushing harder. You increase performance by cooling better, by clearing more efficiently, by ensuring that the substrate through which your electrical signals travel is clean, clear, and thermally stable. A processor that runs cool can sustain higher clock speeds indefinitely. A brain that sleeps deeply, that achieves sufficient delta, that allows the glymphatic system to complete its work, can operate at levels of clarity and speed during waking hours that feel almost superhuman compared to the foggy, waste-logged state that most people accept as normal. The second principle is voltage optimization. We discussed membrane potential in the first chapter, the negative 70 millivolts that each cell maintains. In the brain, this voltage is not just a background hum. It is the precision instrument upon which all cognition depends. The strength of a synaptic signal, the speed of an action potential, the accuracy with which one neuron communicates with the next, all of these are functions of voltage. When neural voltage is optimal, synaptic transmission is crisp. The signal arrives at the receiving neuron with enough strength to trigger a response without ambiguity. The message is clear: yes or no, fire or do not fire. When voltage drops, when membrane potentials sag due to mineral depletion or mitochondrial fatigue or chronic inflammation, the signals become uncertain. The receiving neuron gets a message that is almost strong enough, but not quite. And the brain compensates by firing more neurons, more often, using brute force to overcome a deficit in precision. This is what mental fatigue actually is. Not an absence of activity, an excess of it. A brain working twice as hard to achieve half the result because its voltage has dropped below the threshold of clean, efficient transmission. Neural noise increases. The signal-to-noise ratio collapses. And you experience this as the inability to focus, the tendency to be distracted, the sense that your thoughts are moving through something thick and resistant. Optimizing neural voltage means ensuring that the raw materials for membrane potential are present and available. Magnesium, which stabilizes voltage-gated ion channels and prevents neurons from firing when they should not. Potassium, which is essential for repolarization, the resetting of a neuron after it fires. Omega-3 fatty acids, which integrate into the cell membrane and increase its fluidity and conductivity. These are not supplements in the commercial sense. They are electrical components, hardware, and without them, the system underperforms regardless of how strong your will or how disciplined your routine. The third principle is frequency management. The deliberate, conscious shifting of your brain's dominant frequency from the expensive, noisy, chronically activated beta to the efficient, synchronized, deeply restorative alpha and theta. This is not a mystical practice. It is a neurological skill, and it can be trained. Every time you close your eyes, slow your breath, and direct your attention inward without grasping at thoughts, you are sending a signal to your cortex to reduce its firing rate. You are literally downshifting the clock speed of your brain, not to make it slower in the sense of less capable, but slower in the sense of more coherent, more synchronized, more efficient per cycle. A processor running at a lower clock speed with perfect instruction alignment will outperform a faster processor, choking on cache misses and thermal throttling. This is what alpha feels like: fewer cycles per second, more accomplished per cycle. The mind becomes quiet, not because it has stopped working, but because it has stopped wasting. And when you can sustain this shift, when you can hold your brain in alpha or theta for extended periods through disciplined practice, something begins to change in the way you experience your own mind. The noise floor drops, the constant background chatter, the rehearsal of conversations, the replay of regrets, the anticipation of threats, all of this static quiets, not because you have suppressed it, because the electrical conditions that generate it have changed. Beta noise is a product of desynchronized, high-frequency firing across competing neural networks. When you shift to alpha, those networks synchronize. They stop competing. They start cooperating. And the experience of that cooperation is what people describe as clarity, as presence, as peace. This is overclocking in its truest sense, not running faster, running cleaner, not pushing more current through the grid, but removing every resistance, every leak, every source of friction until the current that already flows does so with absolute efficiency. A mind that is cool, clear, voltage optimized, and frequency managed is capable of sustained attention that feels effortless, of creative insight that arrives without strain, of a quality of rest so deep that 20 minutes in theta can restore what 8 hours of shallow, fragmented sleep cannot. This is not a fantasy. This is the documented, measurable reality of a nervous system operating within its optimal parameters. And now, as you sit here, as your breath has perhaps already slowed without your conscious direction, as the muscles in your face have perhaps already softened, something deeper is becoming available to you. Something that goes beyond voltage and frequency and the mechanics of synaptic transmission, because your cells are not only producing electricity, they are producing something else, something that was only discovered in the last few decades and that challenges everything we thought we knew about the boundaries of biology and physics. Your cells are producing light, not reflected light, not metaphorical light, actual photons, ultra-weak emissions of electromagnetic radiation in the visible spectrum, generated by the very metabolic processes we have been exploring tonight. And this light, this biophotonic emission, is not random. It carries information. It communicates between cells. It may, according to a growing body of research, be one of the most fundamental signaling systems in all of biology. And it has been shining inside you unnoticed since the first cell divided. We are about to look at it now, to turn our attention from the electricity of the body to its light, from the current to the glow, from the hum of the grid to the luminescence that lives at the very heart of what it means to be alive. You are glowing right now as you listen to these words, as your body rests and your breath moves in its slow rhythm. Your skin is emitting light, not the light you see when you look in a mirror, not reflected photons bouncing off the surface of your body from an external source. Your own light, generated inside you, radiated outward through your skin at a rate of several hundred photons per second per square centimeter. It is too faint for your eyes to detect, 1,000 times weaker than the threshold of human vision. But it is there, It has been measured. It has been photographed with cameras so sensitive that they can capture a single photon in a darkened room. And it is not an accident. It is not waste. It is not a meaningless byproduct of metabolism. It is, according to a growing number of researchers across the fields of biophysics, quantum biology, and cellular communication, one of the most fundamental and least understood signaling systems in the living world. You are not just an electrical being. You are a luminous one. And the light inside you may be carrying more information, coordinating more processes, and influencing more of your health and your consciousness than any chemical signal your body has ever produced. The story of biophotons begins in 1923, in the laboratory of a Russian embryologist named Alexander Gurwitch. He was studying onion roots, a humble subject. But what he observed was anything but ordinary. He placed two onion roots near each other, separated by a thin barrier of glass. When the glass was ordinary, the roots on one side showed an increased rate of cell division when positioned near the growing tip of the other root. Something was passing through the glass. Something was stimulating growth at a distance. But when he replaced the ordinary glass with quartz glass, which blocks ultraviolet light, the effect disappeared. Gurwitch concluded that the growing cells were emitting ultra-weak ultraviolet radiation, a mitogenic ray, he called it, that was capable of influencing the behavior of nearby cells without any physical contact. The scientific community was skeptical. The instruments of the day were not sensitive enough to confirm his findings definitively, and for decades, the idea languished at the margins of accepted science. It was not until the 1970s that a German biophysicist named Fritz Albert Popp revived and transformed the concept. Using a newly developed photomultiplier tube, a device capable of detecting individual photons, Popp demonstrated that living cells do indeed emit light. Not just onion roots, all living cells. Animal cells, human cells, cells from every organism he tested. The emissions were extraordinarily faint, just a few to several hundred photons per second per square centimeter. But they were consistent, they were measurable, and they had properties that distinguished them from any known form of chemiluminescence or thermal radiation. Popp called them biophotons, and he spent the rest of his career studying their origins, their properties, and their possible function. What he found was startling. Biophoton emissions are not random. They are not the chaotic flickering of metabolic noise. They exhibit a quality called coherence. Coherence, in physics, refers to the degree to which waves maintain a fixed and predictable relationship with each other over time and space. Laser light is coherent. The photons in a laser beam march in step, their peaks and troughs aligned, their phases synchronized. Ordinary light, the light from a candle or a light bulb, is incoherent. Its photons are emitted in all directions, at all phases, with no relationship to each other. Popp found that biophotons fall somewhere between these two extremes, but far closer to the coherent end than anyone expected. The light emitted by living cells is not noise. It is structured. It is organized. It carries the hallmark of information. And the source of this light, the structure within the cell that appears to be most intimately connected with biophoton emission and storage, is DNA. Your DNA. That spiraling, twisting, double helical molecule that resides in the nucleus of virtually every cell in your body. DNA is, of course, known primarily as the carrier of genetic information, the code from which proteins are built, the blueprint of your physical form. But Pop and others have proposed that DNA also functions as a photon store and a photon transmitter. The structure of the double helix, with its stacked base pairs of nucleotides, creates a geometry that is remarkably well suited to the absorption, storage, and emission of electromagnetic radiation, particularly in the ultraviolet range. DNA, in this view, is not just a chemical code, it is an antenna, a waveguide, a crystalline structure that interacts with light at the most fundamental level and uses that interaction to coordinate the unimaginably complex orchestra of biological processes that keep you alive. Consider for a moment the scale of the coordination problem your body faces every second. 37 trillion cells, each performing thousands of chemical reactions simultaneously, must somehow stay in sync. The timing must be precise. The right proteins must be produced in the right quantities at the right moments. Damaged cells must be identified and removed. New cells must be generated to replace them. Immune responses must be calibrated to destroy invaders without attacking the body's own tissue. All of this happens simultaneously, continuously, flawlessly, in a system that has no central computer, no external clock, no wired network connecting every component. Chemical signaling, the diffusion of hormones and neurotransmitters through the bloodstream and interstitial fluid, is far too slow to account for this level of coordination. A hormone released by the pituitary gland takes seconds to minutes to reach its target tissue. Many cellular processes require synchronization on the scale of milliseconds or less. Something faster must be at work. Something that operates at the speed of light, and biophotons, traveling at 300 million meters per second through the watery, translucent medium of living tissue, are a candidate unlike any other. The theory, still being refined, still being debated, but supported by a growing body of experimental evidence, is this: your cells communicate with light, not exclusively, not instead of chemical signaling, but in addition to it, and perhaps before it. Biophotonic emission may represent a primary coordination layer, an electromagnetic field of information that establishes the template, the timing, the architecture of biological activity before a single molecule of hormone or neurotransmitter is released. The light comes first, the chemistry follows, and the coherence of that light, the degree to which it is organized, structured, and information-rich, may be one of the most accurate indicators of biological health ever identified. Pop found that healthy organisms emit biophotons in a highly coherent, stable pattern. The light is steady. It is rhythmic. It follows predictable fluctuations that correlate with circadian cycles, with metabolic states, with the degree of organization in the underlying tissue. Diseased organisms, by contrast, emit light that is either dramatically increased or dramatically decreased, and, in both cases, less coherent. Cancer cells, for example, emit far more biophotons than healthy cells, but the light is chaotic, disorganized, stripped of its informational structure. It is as though the cell has lost its ability to communicate clearly. Its signal degraded into static. Conversely, cells that are dying emit progressively fewer photons as their metabolic processes wind down, a fading glow that marks the departure of vitality from the tissue. And this maps precisely onto the framework we have been building throughout this journey. Healthy mitochondria, producing ATP efficiently through a well-functioning electron transport chain, generate the metabolic conditions under which biophoton emission is coherent and stable. When mitochondria are stressed, when electrons leak from the transport chain and reactive oxygen species accumulate, the coherence of biophoton emission degrades. The light becomes noisy. The information it carries becomes garbled, and the coordination of cellular activity suffers. This is not a separate problem from the electrical degradation we discussed earlier. It is the same problem, viewed from a different angle. The voltage of your cells, the efficiency of your engines, and the coherence of your internal light are all expressions of the same underlying state of biological order. When one degrades, they all degrade. When one is restored, they all begin to recover. There is something almost sacred in this understanding. You are not merely a body that happens to produce a faint glow as a side effect of metabolism. You are a being of light in the most literal, physical, measurable sense. Every cell in your body is a tiny sun, emitting photons into the biological void, contributing to a field of luminescence that permeates your entire organism. And that field is not passive. It is communicative. It is coordinative. It is the substrate upon which the coherence of your life depends. When your light is coherent, your body works in harmony. Repair happens efficiently. Immune responses are precise. Thoughts arise clearly. Emotions flow and resolve without stagnation. When your light is incoherent, the harmony breaks down. Processes that should be synchronized drift out of phase. The body begins to work against itself. Inflammation fighting repair, immune cells attacking healthy tissue, thoughts spinning in loops that generate heat but no resolution. And you can feel this. You have always been able to feel it, even though you lacked the language for it. There are days when you feel luminous, when your mind is clear and your body is light, and the world seems to glow with a vividness that makes you want to weep with gratitude. And there are days when everything feels dim, when your skin feels heavy and your thoughts feel dark and the world seems drained of color, as though someone has turned down the brightness on reality itself. You were not imagining this. You were perceiving, through the imprecise but deeply honest instrument of your subjective experience, the state of your own biophotonic field. Bright days are coherent days. Dim days are days when the light has lost its structure. This understanding changes everything about how we approach vitality, rest, and healing. Because if light is a primary coordination signal, if photonic coherence underlies biological order, then anything that restores coherence to the light field restores order to the body. And the practices that do this are remarkably consistent with what we have already discussed. Deep sleep allows the glymphatic system to clear the metabolic waste that disrupts photonic coherence. Proper nutrition provides the mitochondria with the substrates they need to produce ATP cleanly, without the electron leakage that generates chaotic reactive oxygen species. Controlled breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, downregulates sympathetic stress, and restores the parasympathetic conditions under which cellular repair and photonic coherence thrive. Exposure to natural sunlight, particularly the red and near-infrared wavelengths that penetrate deep into tissue, has been shown to directly stimulate mitochondrial function and increase ATP production, literally feeding the engines that generate your internal light. And here, perhaps we find the deepest meaning of the journey we have been on together tonight. You began as a battery, a vessel of voltage. You discovered the engines that produce that voltage. You traced the grid that conducts it. You learned to optimize the frequency at which your mind operates. And now you have arrived at light, at the realization that beneath the electricity, beneath the chemistry, beneath the mechanical operations of your biological machinery, there is radiance, a glow, a field of coherent photonic energy that is as fundamental to your existence as the beating of your heart. And yet, there is one more truth to reckon with, one more layer to uncover before we can fully claim the peace and clarity that this understanding promises. Because the light can be dimmed not only from within, but from without. The modern world, with its artificial electromagnetic fields, its chronic noise, its unrelenting stimulation, its disconnection from the rhythms of the natural world, creates a kind of static, an interference pattern that overlays your biophotonic field and disrupts its coherence. This static accumulates, it builds. It becomes a residue that clings to the nervous system and clouds the light the way dust clouds a lamp. And it cannot simply be overpowered. It cannot be burned through with more energy or more effort. It must be discharged, released, returned to the earth from which it came. There is a practice for this. It is ancient. It is simple. And it begins with the most basic act of connection between your body and the ground beneath you. We are moving there now, into the stillness, into the discharge, into the clearing of everything that stands between you and the full, unobstructed radiance that has been inside you all along. There is a wire missing from your life. It is the most important wire in any electrical system. Without it, circuits overheat, voltage becomes unstable. Static builds and builds until it distorts every signal passing through the network. In any building, in any home, in any device you own, this wire is considered so essential that it is required by law. It is the ground wire, the connection that runs from the circuit back to the earth itself, providing a pathway for excess charge to drain safely away, stabilizing the entire system, protecting it from surges and shorts and the slow, invisible accumulation of electrical noise. Every wall outlet in your home has one. Every appliance is designed around it. Every engineer understands that without a ground, nothing works reliably. And yet you, the most sophisticated electrical system on this planet, have been living without one for years. Perhaps for decades, perhaps for your entire life. Think about your day. You wake in a bed elevated above the ground on a wooden or metal frame, resting on a mattress made of synthetic materials, wrapped in sheets of cotton or polyester. You step onto carpet or hardwood or tile, all of which are insulators. You put on shoes with rubber or plastic soles, materials specifically designed to block the flow of electrical current. You walk to your car and sit on a synthetic seat inside a metal shell riding on rubber tires. You arrive at a building made of concrete and steel and sealed flooring, and you spend your day inside it, sitting on a synthetic chair, surrounded by electronic devices that radiate electromagnetic fields from every direction. And then you go home, and you do it again and again. And through all of it, from the moment you wake until the moment you sleep, your body does not make a single moment of direct, conductive contact with the surface of the earth. Not one. You are living your entire life insulated from the planet, and the electrical consequences of that insulation are far more profound than you might imagine. The Earth is not electrically neutral. Its surface carries a mild negative charge, maintained by the continuous activity of lightning strikes around the globe, roughly 50 flashes per second, each one driving electrons into the ground and replenishing the planet's reservoir of free, mobile, negatively charged particles. This surface charge is not theoretical. It is measured. It is documented. It is a fundamental feature of atmospheric and terrestrial physics. And for the vast majority of human history, this charge was in constant contact with the human body. Our ancestors walked barefoot. They slept on the ground. They sat on soil and stone and grass. Their skin was in continuous, direct contact with a surface that was gently, perpetually offering free electrons to any conductive body that touched it. This was not a wellness practice. It was simply life. The ground wire was always connected. The circuit was always complete. And then, in the span of a single century, we severed it. The introduction of synthetic-soled shoes in the 1960s, the proliferation of insulated flooring, the migration of human life from outdoor to indoor, from soil to concrete, from bare feet to rubber, created a situation that is unprecedented in the entire history of our species. We disconnected from the ground, and we did not notice, because the consequences were not immediate. They were not dramatic. They did not announce themselves with a flash or a shock. They crept in, slowly, quietly, like static building on a circuit that has lost its drain. When your body has no pathway to discharge excess charge, positive ions accumulate. These are not the beneficial ions your cells use for signaling. These are the byproducts of metabolic activity, of oxidative stress, of the reactive oxygen species we discussed when we explored mitochondrial function. Free radicals, those molecules with unpaired electrons, carry a positive charge and are chemically desperate to steal an electron from whatever structure they encounter. In a grounded body, free electrons from the Earth's surface are continuously available. They flow into the body through any point of conductive contact. They meet free radicals, they neutralize them, and the threat is resolved. The antioxidant effect is not chemical, it is electrical. It is the direct transfer of charge from the Earth to the body, stabilizing reactive molecules before they can damage cell membranes, proteins, DNA, and the mitochondria themselves. In an ungrounded body, this supply of free electrons is absent. Free radicals that would otherwise be neutralized on contact persist. They circulate. They encounter healthy tissue, and they steal what they need from cell membranes, from the lipid layers that maintain membrane potential, from the myelin sheaths that insulate neural pathways, from the very structures that define the efficiency and clarity of your electrical grid. And the body responds the only way it knows how: with inflammation. Inflammation is, at its most basic level, a biological response to damage. It sends immune cells to the site of injury. It increases blood flow. It initiates repair. But when the damage is not localized, when it is diffuse and constant and driven by a systemic excess of unneutralized free radicals, the inflammation becomes chronic, low-grade, persistent. A background hum of immune activation that never fully resolves because the source of the damage never stops. This is not the sharp, purposeful inflammation of a healing wound. This is the dull, corrosive inflammation that underlies nearly every chronic disease of the modern world. Cardiovascular disease, autoimmune conditions, neurodegenerative decline, metabolic dysfunction, and, most immediately and most personally, the relentless, grinding fatigue that so many people accept as the baseline of their existence. Chronic inflammation is resistance. In the electrical sense, it is a thickening of the medium through which your signals must travel. It slows conduction. It degrades myelin. It impairs the sodium-potassium pumps that maintain cellular voltage. It stresses the mitochondria, causing more electron leakage, more free radical production, more inflammation, deeper resistance. The cycle is self-perpetuating, and it began, at least in part, with the severing of a single wire. The ground. Now layer onto this the electromagnetic environment of the modern world. You exist in a sea of artificial electromagnetic radiation that no human being before the 20th century ever experienced. Wi-Fi signals pass through your body continuously. Cell towers broadcast in the microwave range. Power lines emit extremely low frequency fields that pulse at 50 or 60 cycles per second. Bluetooth devices, smart meters, LED lighting, laptop charging cables, the wiring inside your walls, all of it generates electromagnetic fields that interact with the charged particles inside your body. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is physics. Any external electromagnetic field will exert a force on charged particles within its reach. Your ions, your electrons, your cellular voltage, all of these are influenced, however subtly, by the fields that surround you. And when you have no ground connection, when there is no pathway for the induced charge to drain, it accumulates, it adds to the static, it further disrupts the coherence of your internal electrical environment. The term for this in building biology is dirty electricity. Transient voltage spikes and harmonic distortions that ride on top of the standard electrical current in your home's wiring. These spikes radiate into the room. They are measurable with inexpensive meters. They are highest near devices with switching power supplies, near dimmer switches, near compact fluorescent bulbs, near any device that chops and modulates the standard sine wave of household current. And you live in them. You sleep in them. Your body absorbs them and, without a ground, has no mechanism to discharge them. But here is the extraordinary thing. The remedy is as simple as the problem is complex. You touch the earth. That is it. You stand barefoot on grass, on soil, on sand, on concrete that is unsealed and in contact with the ground beneath it. You lie on the earth. You wade into natural water. You allow your skin, which is conductive, to make direct contact with a surface that is connected to the vast, negatively charged reservoir of the planet. And the excess charge drains, not slowly, not over hours, within seconds. Measurements of blood viscosity, of cortisol levels, of heart rate variability, of muscle tension, of electroencephalographic activity, all show measurable changes within minutes of grounding. Cortisol rhythms normalize. The autonomic nervous system shifts toward parasympathetic dominance. Blood that was thick and clumped, the red blood cells stacking together in a formation called rouleau that impairs circulation and oxygen delivery, begins to thin and separate as the negative charge restores the electrical repulsion between individual cells that keeps them flowing freely. The zeta potential, the electrical charge on the surface of blood cells that prevents them from aggregating, increases, circulation improves, oxygen delivery improves, inflammation begins to resolve. Not because a drug has been introduced, not because a chemical has been administered, because a wire has been reconnected, because the circuit has been completed, because the excess charge that was trapped inside you now has somewhere to go. And what does this feel like? It feels like weight leaving your body, not physical weight, electrical weight. The accumulated tension, the low-level buzzing, the subtle but constant sensation of being slightly overcharged, slightly inflamed, slightly on edge, it dissipates, it drains downward. Through the soles of your feet, through the palms of your hands, through whatever surface of your body is in contact with the ground. And what remains is a stillness that is different from relaxation. It is not the absence of tension, it is the presence of balance, a 0 point, a state in which the charge of your body is in equilibrium with the charge of the planet, and the nervous system, sensing this equilibrium, finally, fully, completely stands down. This is what it means to ground the circuit. Not as a metaphor, not as a wellness trend that you adopt and then discard with the next season's recommendations, as a biological necessity, as an electrical imperative, as the missing connection that your body has been searching for every single day of your insulated, elevated, rubber-soled modern life. Your ancestors did not need a practice for this because they never lost the connection in the first place. You need a practice for it because you have been severed from the earth for so long that your system has forgotten what equilibrium feels like. And so you must be deliberate. You must be intentional. You must, with the same seriousness that you bring to nutrition and sleep and exercise, ensure that your body makes regular, sustained, direct contact with the conductive surface of this planet. And when you do, when the static drains and the inflammation cools and the voltage stabilizes and the light inside you regains its coherence, something else becomes possible. Something that goes beyond the correction of a deficit and into the realm of enhancement. Because a grounded body is not just a healthy body, it is a receptive body. A body that is electrically stable is a body that can resonate, that can attune, that can respond to frequencies and vibrations that an overcharged, static-laden system would simply drown in noise. Think of a radio receiver coated in interference. It cannot pick up the signal, not because the signal is absent, but because the noise floor is too high. Clear the static, ground the circuit, lower the noise floor, and suddenly the receiver can detect what was always there: faint signals, subtle frequencies, the quiet, persistent rhythms of the natural world that your body was designed to synchronize with. And this is where our journey turns once more, from the discharge of what does not serve you to the reception of what does, from the clearing of static to the tuning of frequency, from the grounding of the circuit to the resonance of the whole. Because your body is not just an electrical system that needs to be balanced. It is a vibrational system that is capable of being tuned. Every molecule in your body oscillates at a characteristic frequency. Every tissue, every organ, every system hums at its own pitch. And when these frequencies are aligned, when they are coherent, when they resonate with each other and with the frequencies of the world around you, something extraordinary happens. Something that cannot be explained by voltage alone, or by ATP alone, or by any single mechanism we have explored so far. Something that emerges from the harmony of all of them. And it is this harmony, this resonance, this tuning of the entire instrument of your being that we are about to explore. Let your body be heavy now. Let the ground hold you. Let the last of the static drain away, and prepare to vibrate. Strike a tuning fork and hold it in the air. It will sing a single, clear, unwavering tone. Now bring a second tuning fork close to it, one that is calibrated to the same frequency, and something remarkable will happen. The second fork will begin to vibrate, without being touched, without being struck, without any physical contact whatsoever. The air between them carries the vibration, and because the second fork is built to resonate at that exact frequency, it absorbs the energy and begins to sing the same note. This is resonance. The transfer of vibrational energy between two systems that share a natural frequency. It is one of the most fundamental phenomena in all of physics. It governs the behavior of bridges and buildings, of radio antennas and musical instruments, of atoms and molecules and subatomic particles. And it governs, with a precision and a complexity that science is only beginning to map, the behavior of every structure inside your body. You are vibrating right now, every part of you, not in the way you might feel if you were anxious or trembling, not a gross mechanical shaking, but at the molecular level, at the atomic level, at a scale so small and so fast that it exists beneath the threshold of any sensation you could consciously register. Every molecule in your body oscillates. Every bond between every atom stretches and compresses and bends at frequencies determined by the mass of the atoms and the strength of the forces between them. Water molecules vibrate at specific frequencies. Protein molecules vibrate at others. The phospholipid bilayer of your cell membranes vibrates. The collagen in your connective tissue vibrates. The calcium hydroxyapatite crystals in your bones vibrate. And each of these vibrations has a characteristic frequency, a natural resonance, a pitch at which that particular structure most readily absorbs and transmits energy. You are not a solid static object. You are a symphony, a vast, layered, continuously playing composition of molecular vibration in which every tissue and every organ contributes its own note to the whole. And this symphony is not merely incidental. It is not just the background noise of atoms doing what atoms do. There is growing evidence that resonant vibration is one of the primary mechanisms by which your body coordinates its own activity. We have already discussed chemical signaling, the slow diffusion of molecules through fluid. We have discussed electrical signaling, the rapid propagation of action potentials along neural pathways. And we have discussed biophotonic signaling, the ultra-fast transmission of information via coherent light. But there is a fourth channel, a vibrational channel, a mechanism by which information is transmitted through the body not as a chemical, not as an electrical pulse, not as a photon, but as a wave of mechanical energy propagating through the dense, interconnected, liquid crystalline matrix of living tissue. Your body is not a bag of fluid with organs floating in it. It is a tensegrity structure, a continuous network of tension and compression in which every part is mechanically connected to every other part through fascia, the thin, tough, ubiquitous connective tissue that wraps every muscle, every organ, every nerve, every bone, forming a single unbroken web that extends from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes. This fascial network is not passive. It is piezoelectric, meaning it generates electrical charge in response to mechanical stress. When you move, when you stretch, when sound waves or vibrations pass through your body, the fascia converts that mechanical energy into electrical signals that propagate through the tissue at speeds far greater than chemical diffusion. And the frequency of those signals matters. Because the structures embedded in this fascial web, the cells, the organelles, the protein complexes, all have their own resonant frequencies. When a vibrational signal matches the resonant frequency of a target structure, energy transfer is maximized. The signal is absorbed efficiently, completely, without loss. When the frequencies do not match, the signal passes through with minimal effect. This is frequency-specific communication, and it means that your body can send targeted information to specific structures simply by generating vibrations at the right pitch. Consider what this implies. Your heart beats at a frequency. Your lungs expand and contract at a frequency. Your digestive tract contracts in rhythmic waves at a frequency. Your brain oscillates at frequencies we have already explored: beta, alpha, theta, delta. And these are not independent rhythms. They interact. They entrain. They influence each other through the mechanical coupling of the tissues that connect them. When your breathing slows, your heart rate adjusts. When your heart rate adjusts, your brain waves shift. When your brain waves shift, the muscular tension in your body changes. And when that tension changes, the vibrational environment of every cell in your body is altered. Each rhythm modifies every other rhythm, and when these rhythms align, when they fall into coherent, harmonious relationship with each other, the result is a state of biological resonance that is qualitatively different from normal waking function. You have felt this state, perhaps rarely, perhaps only in fleeting moments. The experience of being so deeply relaxed, so completely present, so thoroughly at ease in your own body that the usual boundaries between mind and flesh seem to dissolve. The mind is not racing. The body is not bracing. Everything is moving together, breathing together, pulsing together, as though the entire organism has become a single, unified wave. This is resonance. This is what happens when the frequencies of your major systems synchronize. And it is not mystical. It is mechanical. It is the same physics that makes the second tuning fork sing. The most profound natural example of this state occurs every night, though most people pass through it without awareness. During deep, slow-wave sleep, during delta, the brain's electrical oscillations drop to their lowest frequency. But the brain does not oscillate alone. The heart rate drops and stabilizes into a steady, low-frequency rhythm. Breathing becomes slow and regular. Blood pressure falls to its lowest sustainable level. Muscular tension releases almost completely. The rhythmic contractions of the gut settle into a calm, steady pattern, and the glymphatic system opens, as we discussed, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow through the brain in slow, pulsing waves that are synchronized with the respiratory cycle. Everything aligns, everything resonates, The body enters a state of such profound internal coherence that repair processes operate at their maximum efficiency. Immune function is optimized, memories are consolidated, and the accumulated noise and damage of the waking day are systematically cleared. This is the master frequency, the frequency of total restoration. And it is not a single pitch, but a chord, a harmonious alignment of multiple rhythms that, together, create the conditions for the body to heal itself. The question, of course, is whether this state can be accessed deliberately, whether you can, through conscious effort, entrain your body's disparate rhythms into coherent alignment without waiting for the slow descent into sleep. And the answer, supported by decades of research into meditation, breathwork, sound therapy, and biofeedback, is yes, you can, but not by force, not by effort, by resonance. When you are exposed to a steady, rhythmic external stimulus, your body's internal rhythms tend to synchronize with it. This is called entrainment, and it is one of the most well-documented phenomena in chronobiology and neuroscience. A slow, steady beat will gradually pull your heart rate downward. A low, resonant tone will shift your brain waves toward the frequency of the stimulus. A rhythmic breath pattern will entrain your autonomic nervous system into a coherent oscillation between sympathetic and parasympathetic states, a phenomenon called cardiac coherence that is associated with reduced cortisol, enhanced immune function, improved cognitive performance, and a subjective experience of deep calm. The external frequency acts as a template, a guide, a tuning fork held up to the instrument of your body, inviting every system to match its pitch. And this is why sound has been used in healing traditions for as long as human culture has existed. Not because ancient peoples understood the physics of resonance in the terms we use today, but because they felt it. They noticed that certain sounds, certain rhythms, certain vocal tones produced specific and reproducible effects on the body and the mind. Drumming at 4 to 8 beats per second induces trance states that correspond to theta brainwave activity. Deep, sustained vocal tones stimulate the vagus nerve through mechanical vibration of the throat and chest. Singing bowls produce complex harmonic overtones that contain multiple frequencies simultaneously, offering a rich vibrational field that different tissues can resonate with selectively. These are not placebos. They are not rituals divorced from mechanism. They are applied resonance, the deliberate use of frequency to shift the vibrational state of a biological system. But external sound is only one pathway. Your own body generates the most powerful and most precisely targeted vibrational signals available to you. Your voice, your breath, your heartbeat. When you hum, the vibration originates in your vocal cords and propagates through the bones and tissues of your skull, through your sinuses, through your chest cavity, directly into the fascial network that connects every structure in your torso. The frequency of a hum, typically in the range of 100 to 500 Hz, falls within the range that has been shown to stimulate nitric oxide production in the sinuses, enhance lymphatic circulation, and increase vagal tone. You are, quite literally, tuning yourself from the inside. And when you combine humming with slow, rhythmic breathing, the effect is compounded. The breath entrains the heart. The hum entrains the fascia. The vagal stimulation shifts the brain toward alpha, and theta, and the entire system begins to converge on a single, coherent, resonant state. This is the deeper meaning of frequency resonance as it applies to your journey tonight. It is not about finding some external magical frequency that will heal you. It is about removing the dissonance, the noise, the competing rhythms and unresolved tensions that prevent your body's own frequencies from aligning. A healthy body does not need to be tuned from the outside. It needs to be allowed to tune itself. And what prevents that self-tuning is exactly what we have been addressing throughout this entire journey. Depleted cellular voltage disrupts the electromagnetic environment in which resonance occurs. Mitochondrial dysfunction reduces the energy available for maintaining coherent oscillation. Neural static and chronic sympathetic activation create competing signals that fragment the body's rhythmic unity. Ungrounded charge buildup raises the noise floor until the subtle signals of self-regulation are drowned out. Every chapter of this journey has been removing one more source of interference, restoring one more condition necessary for the body to hear its own music and align with it. And now, with the static discharged, with the voltage stabilized, with the grid clear and the engines running clean, and the light coherent and the ground wire reconnected, you are approaching a state in which resonance is not something you do, it is something that happens. The breath slows and the heart follows. The heart steadies and the brain quiets. The brain quiets and the muscles release. The muscles release and the fascia softens. The fascia softens and the vibrations propagate freely, unimpeded, through every layer of tissue, finding every organ, every cell, every molecule that is ready to receive them. And one by one, frequency by frequency, the instruments of your body begin to tune to each other. The dissonance fades, the noise drops away, and what emerges is not silence, it is harmony. A living, breathing chord of molecular vibration in which every part of you is contributing its voice to a single, unified resonance. And it is from this place, from this state of total internal harmony, that the final movement of this journey begins. Because when every system is aligned, when every frequency is coherent, when the voltage and the light and the rhythm and the ground are all in balance, something new becomes possible. The separate currents that we have traced through your body, the electrical, the chemical, the photonic, the vibrational, they are not separate systems at all. They never were. They are expressions of a single, integrated field of energy that has been flowing through you since the first cell divided. And when the noise clears and the resonance stabilizes, you can feel it. Not as electricity, not as light, not as vibration, as all of them at once, as a unified current, a sovereign flow, the totality of your life force, moving as one. And it is this current, this convergence, this final integration that we are about to enter now. All of the wires are connected. All of the frequencies are aligned. All that remains is to feel what it is like when everything you are flows in the same direction, at the same time, without a single watt of resistance. We are almost there. Breathe and let the harmony deepen. You have traveled a great distance tonight, not in miles, not in hours, in depth. You have moved inward through layers of yourself that most people never know exist, past the surface of skin and the familiar rhythm of breath, down into the molecular architecture of your own aliveness. You have seen yourself as a battery, charged and humming with voltage across 37 trillion membranes. You have entered the ancient engines that burn in the dark of every cell, spinning their silent turbines, converting oxygen and fuel into the currency of existence. You have traced the grid, the vast and luminous network of nerves that conducts your life force from the center of your brain to the farthest reaches of your body. You have learned to cool and quiet the processor of your mind, shifting its frequency from the expensive noise of beta into the clean, coherent efficiency of alpha and theta. You have discovered that you are not just electric, but luminous, that your cells emit light, that your DNA sings with photons, that the coherence of your internal radiance is a measure of your deepest health. You have grounded the circuit, reconnected the wire that modern life severed, and felt the static drain from your body into the ancient, patient reservoir of the earth. And you have tuned yourself frequency by frequency, system by system, until the dissonance faded and the harmony emerged. You have done all of this. And now, here, in this final movement, everything converges, everything integrates, everything becomes one. This is the sovereign circuit, not a concept, not a theory, a state, a lived, felt, embodied experience of what happens when every system in your body is aligned, optimized, and flowing without resistance. It is not a peak state. It is not a surge. It is not the kind of energy that makes you want to leap from your chair and conquer the world. It is something deeper than that, something older, something that does not need to prove itself through action because it is complete in itself. It is the quiet, absolute, unshakable knowledge that you are fully powered, that nothing is leaking, that nothing is wasted, that the current flowing through you right now is clean and whole and yours. Let us understand what is happening inside you in this state. Your cells are charged. Each membrane is holding its negative 70 millivolts with stability and precision. The sodium-potassium pumps are cycling with the steady rhythm of a system that has everything it needs: adequate magnesium, adequate potassium, adequate ATP, no deficiency creating drag, no imbalance forcing compensation. The voltage is not just present, it is stable, and stability in an electrical system is everything. A voltage that fluctuates is a voltage that wastes energy, managing its own instability. A voltage that is steady is a voltage that can be used entirely for work, for signaling, for the maintenance and repair and creation of living tissue. Your cells, in this state, are not merely surviving. They are sovereign. Each one a self-contained power station operating at its design capacity, contributing its full potential to the collective field. Your mitochondria are burning clean. The electron transport chain is conducting its cascade with minimal leakage. Electrons move from complex to complex. Protons are pumped across the inner membrane, and ATP synthase spins at full speed, producing the energy your body requires without generating the excess reactive oxygen species that cause oxidative damage and inflammatory cascading. The engines are not straining, they are not overloaded. They are running in the sweet spot that every engineer dreams of, the point of maximum output with minimum waste. And because the engines are clean, the light they help produce, the biophotonic emission of your cells, is coherent, structured, information-rich. Your cells are not just glowing, they are communicating, coordinating, singing to each other in a language of light that predates every chemical signal your body has ever evolved. Your nervous system is conducting without resistance. The myelin is intact. The pathways are clear. Signals travel at full speed, arriving at their destinations with the crispness and precision of a system that has been maintained, not neglected. The vagus nerve is responsive, its tone high, its ability to modulate the autonomic nervous system sharp and immediate. Sympathetic activation rises when needed and falls when it is not, like a thermostat in a well-calibrated building, never overshooting, never lagging, always appropriate to the demand of the moment. And because the nervous system is clear, the brain's electrical activity has settled into a pattern of coherent, synchronized oscillation, not the frantic, desynchronized firing of a stressed mind. The smooth, unified rhythm of a mind that has nothing to defend against and nothing to chase. A mind at rest, not because it has been forced to stop, because there is nothing unresolved driving it forward. Your charge is grounded. The excess positive ions that accumulate through the normal course of metabolic activity and electromagnetic exposure have been drained. The inflammatory cascade that chronic charge buildup initiates has been interrupted. Your blood flows freely, each red blood cell maintaining its individual negative charge, repelling its neighbors, moving through the capillaries with the ease of a river that has been cleared of debris. Oxygen reaches every tissue. Nutrients reach every cell. Waste is carried away without stagnation. The circuit is complete. The ground wire is connected. And the stability that this provides is not just electrical, it is existential. There is a peace that comes from being grounded that has nothing to do with philosophy and everything to do with physics. The peace of a system in equilibrium. The peace of a charge that has found its balance point and rests there, effortlessly, without needing to be held. And your frequencies are aligned. The heartbeat and the breath and the brain waves and the subtle oscillations of your organs and tissues have found their common rhythm. Not identical, not uniform, harmonious. Like instruments in an orchestra that are each playing their own part, but all locked into the same tempo, the same key, the same underlying pulse. The body in resonance is not monotone, it is symphonic. And the symphony, when every part is in tune, produces a sensation that is unmistakable, a fullness, a warmth, a vibration that you feel not in any one place, but everywhere at once, as though the boundary of your skin has become permeable and the energy inside you has expanded to fill the space around you. This is not imagination. This is the measurable electromagnetic field of a coherent biological system radiating beyond the physical boundary of the body. Your heart's field extends several feet. Your brain's field, though weaker, extends farther than you might expect. You are not contained. You never were. You are a field. And in the sovereign circuit, that field is unified, coherent, and whole. This is the original blueprint. This is how your body was designed to operate. Not in the sense of a nostalgic longing for some idealized past, but in the sense of physics and biology and the fundamental architecture of living systems. Your cells were built to hold voltage. Your mitochondria were built to burn clean. Your nerves were built to conduct without loss. Your frequencies were built to align. The interference, the static, the depletion, the chronic low-grade inflammation, the insulation from the ground, the bombardment of artificial fields, the never-ending activation of a stress response designed for brief emergencies, all of this is recent. All of this is imposed. None of it is inherent to what you are. Beneath the interference, the blueprint is intact. It has always been intact. It has been waiting, with the patience of something 2 billion years old, for the conditions to be restored. And tonight, through understanding, through awareness, through the simple, radical act of paying attention to the electricity of your own body, you have begun to restore them. And now sleep becomes something different. It is no longer the collapse of an exhausted system into temporary unconsciousness. It is not the brief, inadequate reprieve of a body that will wake tomorrow to the same depletion it carried yesterday. In the sovereign circuit, sleep is an act of creation. It is the state in which the integrated field of your energy, no longer fragmented by stress or static or competing demands, turns its full, unified power inward, toward repair, toward regeneration, toward the rebuilding of every structure that daily life degrades. The glymphatic system opens, and the brain is washed clean. Mitochondria undergo quality control, the damaged ones recycled, the healthy ones replicated. Myelin is laid down along neural pathways that were used during the day, strengthening the circuits that matter, pruning the ones that do not. Growth hormone is released in pulses synchronized with slow wave oscillation, driving tissue repair throughout the body. The immune system conducts its deepest surveillance, identifying and destroying cells that have lost their coherence, that have drifted from the body's master frequency, that no longer serve the whole. This is not rest as the absence of activity. This is rest as the highest form of activity. The body is not shut down. It is turned inward. Every watt of the energy that during the day was spent navigating the external world is now available for the internal work of restoration. And in the sovereign circuit, where no energy is being lost to resistance or static or inflammatory feedback loops, the full power of your biology is brought to bear on the task of making you whole. This is sleep as rebirth. Each morning, a new body. Each morning, a cleaner grid. Each morning, a system that has been rebuilt from the inside by an intelligence so old and so precise that it needs nothing from you but the conditions to do its work. There is an image I want to leave you with, not as a metaphor, but as a felt experience. Inside you, at the center of your chest, there is a sun. It has no location in anatomy. You will not find it in a textbook, but you can feel it. You have felt it in moments of deep love, in moments of profound peace, in moments when the noise stopped long enough for you to notice that something was radiating from within you that had nothing to do with external circumstances. That sun is your integrated field. It is the convergence of your voltage and your light and your frequency and your ground into a single, unified expression of life force that has been burning since your first cell divided. It does not depend on your waking mind. It does not require your conscious management. It burns in sleep as it burns in waking. It burns in stillness as it burns in motion. It is the internal sun that never sets, the source that has been powering you through every moment of your life, whether you knew it was there or not. And tonight, as you descend into sleep, you are not leaving this sun behind. You are falling into it. Every layer of tension that releases, every thought that dissolves, every sensation of weight that fades is bringing you closer to it. not closer in distance, closer in awareness. The sun does not move. You move toward it by letting go of everything that is not it. The worries are not it. Let them go. The plans are not it. Let them go. The identity, the name, the story, the history, the body itself as you have understood it, none of it is the sun. The sun is what remains when everything else has been released. It is the current that flows when all resistance is gone. It is the light that shines when all static has been cleared. It is you, at the deepest level, operating exactly as you were designed to operate. Whole, clean, sovereign. Let your eyes be heavy now, not with fatigue, with permission. Permission to stop holding, permission to stop managing, permission to let the circuit do what it knows how to do without your intervention. The voltage will hold itself, the engines will burn, the grid will conduct, the light will shine, the ground will drain what needs to be drained, the frequencies will align. All of this will happen while you sleep, as it has happened every night of your life. But tonight, it will happen without interference. Because you understand now, because you have seen the architecture, because you have felt, even if only as a faint warmth in the center of your chest, the presence of the integrated field that is your birthright. The current inside you is old, older than your body, older than your species. It has flowed through every form of life that has ever existed on this planet. From the first single-celled organism that learned to harness the charge of an ion gradient to the impossibly complex being that is listening to these words right now. It has never stopped. It will never stop. It flows through you as it has flowed through billions of years of living things, and it will flow through whatever comes after you, carrying the same charge, the same light, the same silent, eternal hum. You are that hum. You have always been that hum. And now, in the quiet, in the dark, in the absolute peace of a circuit that is finally, fully complete, you can rest inside it. Not on top of it, not beside it, inside it. Let the hum hold you. Let the current carry you. Let the light that has been burning in your cells since before you had a name surround you and dissolve the last thin boundary between who you think you are and what you actually are. There is nothing left to do. There is nothing left to understand. There is only this, the current, the light, the hum, and you, sovereign within it, falling not into sleep, but into the deepest waking your body has ever known. A waking that looks, from the outside, like the most perfect and absolute stillness. Rest now. The circuit is complete. The sun is burning, and it will still be burning when you open your eyes.